Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. I'm going to do the first video in the weathering tutorial series that we're going to start on here. I don't know how many parts will be in this whole series, but we'll see as we go along. But today we're going to work on a little technique that I use for creating mud and heavy dirt that's caked on the underneath of a model. This works very well for military stuff. A lot, it leans more toward the military side than it really does automotive. But if you're doing something like a four-wheel drive mud truck or something like that, it would work in automotive. But it's a pretty simple technique. The products that we're going to be using is stuff that you use on to build a regular model anyway. It's nothing special. And as you can see, I have the Evercoat Spot and Glaze putty, the Tamiya white filler, the AK Interactive water-based filler, and also the Squadron white. You can use any of them. You can use a Squadron green also. Any style of putty that you have that you're used to, that you like, and you use on your models will work for this technique. So what we're going to be using today, and what I use probably the most out of all of the putties when I'm doing this technique, is the Tamiya white. And we'll set that to the side. The next thing we're going to be using is something else that you'll have in your arsenal for building models, and that's a paintbrush. And this paintbrush has been modified. This started out as a flat brush, and you can see how short it is here, which basically it started out as a brush just like this. And all I do is come back here and leave about maybe, 1/8 inch, 3/16 of the bristle sticking out, clip them off with a pair of scissors, and you end up with this here. And this is what I call a stippling brush. And the way that this brush works is you're basically using it to dot like this. And since I'm using the Tamiya lacquer-based putty, you have to have a little bit of lacquer thinner in a bottle, which I have here in an old glue bottle. And that cleans out the putty out of your brush. And then you can just take and scrub it like that after you get the most of the putty out of it, and set it to the side, and you're good to go for the next time. The bristles are still nice and flexible. They're not all stuck together. If you're using the water-based putty, you can just use water for cleanup, or alcohol or anything like that. But the majority of the putties are going to be lacquer-based, so make sure that you have a little bit of lacquer thinner in a bottle. All right. So that's the two things that we're going to be using to do this. And what we're working on is, I've been tinkering around with this Tamiya Type 16 Japanese military vehicle here, I guess you could call it. It's a pretty cool subject. So I got this out, and very nice kit, goes together very well so far. And I'm doing a little bit of a mud technique on the underside of this. So that's the kit that we're working with, and here's where we're at so far. I'll see if I can get a view of it up here close to the camera to see, let everybody see what's going on. As you can see, we have the technique started down through this side where you see the white. And all that is the Tamiya white putty that's been dotted on with the brush. And this side over here, you can see the build up areas and stuff like this. Now that's kind of what it looks like when you are almost finished up to final weathering and dry brushing and things like that. But we're going to do the whole technique all the way through. I'll start out with how we dot it on, and then I will go to the next step, which will be doing the base color on this, and then how you dry brush to pick out all the clumps and stuff like that. So stay tuned for those. As video is going to be coming one after the other here today, and we'll get through this whole process. So to start out with, the reason why I do it this way, as you can see, I have the suspension and everything that still needs to go on the bottom of here. But with mud, it's going to get in behind and underneath of things, and I like to go ahead and get my initial texture down before I start putting a lot of the suspension components into place. And I'll also get that base coat down on there, so that when we put the main suspension bogies into place on this, you can weather them separately, and you already have the mud effect down underneath of that stuff, and also the base color. So pretty easy process to do. Nothing real hard about this at all. There's two different ways that you can do the getting the putty from the tube to the model, and one of them you can just squeeze a little bit out of the end of the tube here and dot the brush into it. You don't need a whole lot at one time, and this is all going to be random. You don't really want to try to make a pattern out of this. You want it to be very random, because mud and the way that splatters is random, of course. So you want a little bit of heavier spots here and there, and some spots you won't cover up this green that you see down here at all. You won't have any of that. You allow it to come up and touch the edges of some of your raised items. And like I say, there's nothing hard about it. It's a pretty neat technique. It has a very dramatic effect when you're done. On camera, it may look a little heavy, but it's not. You can make it heavier if you want to. It just depends on, what scale you're, working with, and how heavy that you want the mud to be. But for me personally, I like this technique better. It looks more in scale than going back and creating clumps of mud after you've painted the model. I'm not a fan of that. There's some guys that can do it and pull it off very well, but a lot of the models that I've seen that's been done like that, it just looks out of scale. It looks fake. So this here is this technique works very well for me. And as you can see, there's nothing hard about it. You just, dot it, get a little bit on the brush and dot it around, and, leave some clumps here and there, and some spots bare. Another way that you can do this, and definitely be careful with this if you're using a lacquer-based product, is you can take a little bit of the filler and you can squeeze it out onto the model in one area. And then you can take your brush and work it from there, which is actually a little bit quicker to do it that way. But make sure that you get it moved around pretty quickly, because if you don't, being lacquer, it will tend to etch into the model right where you spread it out. So make sure that you get it moved around fairly quick. And other than that, as far as putting it on the model, that is all there is to it. There's nothing difficult about it at all. And like I say, it does look, probably on camera, it will look a little heavy, but it is not heavy. It's once you put a base coat on this and do some dry brushing to it, it's amazing the texture and the effect that you get off of it. So I'm going to go ahead off camera and finish up the rest of dotting around underneath of this, and then when we come back on the next video, we'll go ahead and put a base color down, and we'll cover all this up, and then we'll go from there. So if you have any questions or concerns, leave me a comment on the video. I'll be more than glad to answer them for you, or answer your question in the next video, and maybe show you a little bit more of the technique. So like I say, if you have any questions at all, definitely go ahead and ask, and we will try to get all the information that we can out there. And this is a technique that I actually picked up from a tank modeler. It was in one of the books on modeling tanks, and that's where this technique comes from for creating mud. So a little bit of a history on the technique there. So yeah, like I say, that's what we have for now. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up off of camera. We'll come back, we'll put the base coat over top of this, so stay tuned for that. Like always, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.